Browse. Yeah, so when I have something like a short message, I actually don't use dictation mode. I use like the phrase or say format or sentence, that those kind of things. Sentence, this is a test. Browse. Yeah, and of course it wrote a test instead of a test, but that is my problem. And when I have this kind of like, really short sentence that I want to fix, I use my tracker. Void, drill, browse. I mean, that kind of stuff. Since I have an eye tracker, I'm quite comfortable with that. When there are, like small amounts of things I need to fix, I would just do it like this, like in situ. If there is something larger, I would use the draft editor. Undo, redo, period. Sentence, also some text and errors and stuff and whatever, exclamation mark. Browse. So the draft editor that we have upstream to Knaus.j have basically 5 different commands. So in essence, it takes whatever you have selected and moves over to VS Code. So if you say draft this, it is just your selection. If you say draft line, it first call like edit.select line, which is a Talon action. If you say draft all, it first call like editor select all, which is also a Talon action. And if you say draft top or draft bottom, it first call editor select from start of file, editor.select from end of file. So it's basically just setting a selection before it just opens the draft editor. Draft line. Browse. So the draft editor, as you can see, it opened VS Code. It created a new untitled file and just pasted the content. And here, of course, I would use cursorless. Pre each, write void drill, chuckox, camel format sam pass near, browse. I mean, that kind of stuff. All the good things the cursorless has to offer, like homophones and all of that, is just a really nice way to do it. And then once I'm done, it's just draft submit. Draft submit. Browse. And as you could see, it just replaced the content. And the reason for that is that if you set the selection and switch to another application, the selection stays. Dragging. Focus code. Snap right. As you can see here in Firefox, my code is still selected. Cancel. Focus Firefox. Word hello. Browse. So what the draft editor is doing is just like focusing back to whatever the origin window was, and then just inserting that. And since the selection is kept, it just overwrites whatever you used for draft. Some applications, I think like the Notepad in Windows, handles this quite poorly, but most modern applications kind of work well. So this is how I do most of my short messages. Formatters, using the eye tracker to fix them in situ, or using the draft editor. On the other hand, if I want to do like a long email or like a lot of documentation, that kind of stuff, I would use the dictation mode. I think it's probably just called dictation mode in Knaus.j. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just have the word dictate. Slapper. Dictate. So now that I'm in dictation mode, everything I say will just be output as text. I also have actually a few commands. New block, task, new line, bullet, over, browse. So you can see when I said things like task and bullets, those were actual commands I have in my dictation mode. When I just said things that are not interpreted as a command, they would just be output as text. So the way I do it, I would basically go through everything. Maybe not if I had pages and pages of text, but I would not stop at the first error. So I would use dictation mode, slapper, dictate, Here we have some more text, new block, some other text, period, some more text, over, browse. And after I'm done, I would just use the draft editor. Draft file, browse. And then I would use cursorless to clean that up. So instead of typing a sentence and like, oh, there's an error here and fixing that, I would actually try to output as much text as I can, especially if I have like a notion in my head of what I want to say. So I would basically be talking to my computer, write out the entire email, use the draft editor to fix it, and then submit it back. That is kind of like my workflow, and I feel that that is faster than dictating a sentence, fixing that, dictating another sentence, fixing that kind of stuff. And with cursorless, of course, you could use, for example, if you had a homophone that was incorrect in multiple places, you could just say like phones like air and bat and cap and fix that in multiple places once in cursorless. So that is kind of a good way to try to get all your problems there at the same time. I also have a specific placeholder that the spoken form is just blah. Stole that from Pokey. That just inserts a placeholder text. Draft submit. Say this is some text blah and some more text. Browse. So you can see here when I said blah, it actually typed out well placeholder. That is just a Talon capture. The rule is just the text blah and it just returns the string placeholder. And the reason for that is that maybe I want to paste something there from that I have, or I want to manually like spell a code or some error message or something. It's just a nice way to dictate the entire paragraph and then like, oh, I ran into this error, blah, and then I talked to my colleague, blah, and now we have this issue, blah, that kind of stuff. And then draft file, clear pit, air bat cap 123, browse. That way I would just replace the placeholders. I have actually modified my draft editor, so if I have the placeholder still there and try to submit it, it won't work. Undo, undo, draft submit, browse. Could you see that blue text that came up in the middle of the screen that said that placeholder found?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so that is just, and that is because, as I said, I try to go through like the entire email or the entire issue, dictating everything, just inserting placeholders, and that is just, I mean that is just like a string, like dot contains or like includes, that just checks that that string, the placeholder word is not available in the drafted material. So that is basically how I would do it. I would use formatters for short things, dictation mode for longer things. For small fixes, I would just use my eye tracker and like normal non-cursorless commands. For larger corrections, I would use the draft editor. And one trick I want to show you that I don't think many people actually realize. Draft submit. Chuck pit, draft submit. Clear file. Drafts. Is that if you say draft this, it is whatever you have currently selected, and that can be empty. Draft this. Sentence some text from cursorless. Draft submit. Slapper. Browse. Or I can of course even do that in the middle of a sentence. So if I set my cursor, left void, left, draft this, say some more text, draft submit, draft submit, browse. So that is a way, for example, if you are afraid of editing in your email or Slack or wherever, you can actually just do a draft this on something empty, and then you can work on like that part of the text in the draft editor and then just submit that. I think that if you, for example, are in your email program or something and you know this is going to be a long message, just start with draft this with empty and then just write everything in cursorless. That is how I would. I of course don't follow that. I think it's going to be short and then it turns into something longer and I move over to cursorless. But if I have like the foresight that this is going to be a long message, I just start with an empty draft. That is actually quite useful. And the draft top and the draft bottom commands are quite nice for responding to emails, because if you respond to an email in many programs, you would have like the entire uh, history of the messages like above or below. And if you say like draft all, you would get like everything there. So draft top and draft bottom is nice way to just get from your cursor to the top or to the bottom of the file. And I added those specifically for email programs, actually.
Andres, one quick question. So
Hmm?
you mentioned you draft long emails or long pieces of text within the draft editor. When I do that, I'm always super paranoid I'm going to lose it, and so I just like say copy file to just like copy it
Mm.
periodically and rely on my clipboard manager to keep checkpoints that way. Do you have a better system?
I think we have upstream that it keeps the last draft as a variable to Knaus
But
J.
if like, but no, but like as you're like, I don't know, like as you're drafting, and it's because the thing is, it's like an untitled file that's
Yeah.
unsaved, right? And so like, what if VS Code crashed, or
Oh,
I,
okay. Yeah, I
I
got
don't
it.
know, just you know what I mean? Like, so I just copy the whole thing
Yeah,
periodically because
yeah.
when it gets long enough, I get paranoid.
Yeah. Of course, you can use like a copy file command in cursorless to just keep track of it in the clipboard. But as I said, if I draft something, slapper, draft
So I would
this,
be surprised if there's a VS Code plugin to keep local
save
file
some more
history for
text,
anonymous files.
browse. Probably not,
Yeah.
or I mean, we could of course just tweak the draft editor to actually use a file in like the temp directory or something instead of doing untitled file. I mean, uh, if that is an issue, we can definitely.
Yeah,
Um,
we could. I mean, to be honest, the copying to the clipboard thing works okay for me. I was just kind of curious if you had like, do you, like, because you mentioned like you'll just sometimes draft an entire email from
yeah,
scratch
but I mean, it's the same thing.
there, and you're not
If I do
concerned.
it in my email program and my email program crashes, I mean, it's not really any
I
larger
guess.
risk of doing it in VS Code.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah,
But most
yeah.
most email, like Gmail for example, it's auto saving. I mean, they want they want
Mm.
the data. They'll send it to you every time you type a character.
Yeah,
It
that's
goes
true.
back to Google, right? So like,
Yeah.
generally nowadays most things are you're not going to lose it if the thing crashes. I don't know. I
Mm.
get paranoid. Like if I'm drafting a long issue, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So if that is an issue, and I can definitely get where you're coming from, and I think we should probably just make it so it uses a file in the temp directory instead. So if VS Code crashes when you open it again, the file will still be there instead of using an untitled file. That's probably the easiest solution.
Yeah, that's not a bad
Yeah.
idea.
I also do the same thing as Pocky. As Pocky, I also constantly copy
Right.
the content of the file I'm editing because I've lost a couple of times things that I was editing before uh, the last update that it saves the draft, but I still don't know how to use it actually.
Yeah,
But
I'm going
I'm
to show
always
you here. So
paranoid, and
So for example, so here
yeah.
I'm now having a draft here on the right hand side. I'm going to submit that. Draft submit. Slap. Draft submit. Slap. Draft submit. Browse.
So you
Yeah,
receive.
it's basically just storing that in a Python variable in RAM, on Talon.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
as
that's
long as
cool.
Talon is not turned off, your last draft will still be there. So it's kind of like an additional clipboard space.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's nice. And a lot of the time, what it happens is I'm writing and I search something and I go draft submit, but the page changed and
Yeah,
it's,
definitely. That's why
the
we added
content
that.
is lost.
Yeah. Yeah, I do that
And
sometimes
there's no
too.
way
I
to
would search for
remember.
something and would mess up my selection.
Hmm. I'm thinking maybe we could do something to remember which tab it was
We could
with
do that
maybe.
with Rango, for example, but
Yeah,
Talon
that's what
itself has no notion at all about like the
that,
actual content of your
that
browser. But we could do that with Rango.
that's Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Of course you were. You're Mr. Anger, David. Yeah, that's actually a good call. More browser interaction or like integration would be nice for Talon in general, so you could actually get back to your tab you had. And I mean, on macOS we could probably use AxeKit and stuff like that to
Yeah, I
actually
could.
remember your exact selection in your exact input field and all of that.
Yeah, we could just have a Rango command it gives you the window number and the tab number, and then when you're going to insert it, you you tell Rango to move to that window and that
You must
tab.
also keep track of which input field, because if you switch
Yeah,
tab, I think you lose that selection. So you need to actually.
yeah, that's also, well, yeah, with a selector.
Yeah.
You could do that with a selector. Yes.
Yeah, so that's basically how I do selection. And of course, I can just show off that I actually have dictation with another engine for Swedish. Slap. Slap. Swedish. Testa med lite svensk text. Över. Browse. So that is actually using dictation mode with web speech in Swedish. Of course, you could use that for like, German or French or Spanish or whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. The whole idea is that you can actually have different dictation modes with different languages, which is quite useful.
Pretty quick. I thought it was going to be slower because I have to set up for Spanish.
Works quite well, and I actually have a different words to replace for Swedish. Snap center. Tss. Browse. As you can see here, I have words to replace en and words to replace sv. And those are just like on line 46 and 51. They're just setting two different phrase replacers based on different dictionaries. And here at the top, line 20 and 26, we actually have like the replace word function that is context specific. So we use different phrase replacers. Because from the beginning I didn't have this, and there are some Swedish words that exist in English as well that I had in words to replace. So I would just say a normal Swedish word and that would just be replaced by something completely different from words to replace. That was kind of irritating.
Yeah. And do you have to, for a different language, do you have to create new commands in that language?
Yeah.
Or are the English available?
Split right. Hide all. Browse. You could of course do it so by default all Talon files has language en, like implicitly at the top. But I could add language en, language sv, and then all the English commands would be available in Swedish. But the way I actually done it is that you can see here on the left hand side indent and dedent, and there on the right hand side on line 11 and 12 indrag, utdrag, just the Swedish translation. I have like new line, ny rad, new paragraph, new paragraph, almost the same, that kind of stuff. So from beginning I actually didn't have that. I had used all the English commands in Swedish, but that actually became somewhat annoying because I actually found myself, since I was dictating in Swedish, I tried to say like paragraph and list and all of that in Swedish, and for me it was like lower cognitive dissonance or cognitive load to just stay in that same language, and Talon treats that completely fine, no problem at all.
I find these commands to be quite delightful.
Sorry?
I find your Swedish commands to be quite delightful.
Yeah,
I'm actually kind of wondering, like, which other language would be best to learn just to use like their
Yeah,
I like upgift
commands. Yes,
I like upgift. That's good.
List punct is pretty good too.
Yeah.
that's the one that got me.
Yeah,
I might use
list
that.
punct is actually like a portmanteau of two words, list and punct, which is period. So it's literally like a list period or list
That's
dot.
a star, not a period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And what
yeah,
is gift?
yeah,
Oh, but it will turn
gift,
into a dotted list.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I like it.
yeah. It's just one of those things where, and you can see here, like we call it paragraph as well. We just spell it with an F instead of a PH. You know.
I was commenting on this earlier, but your over command with the umlaut over it, that tickled my brain a lot.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so the Swedish word for over is över, and we use it exactly the same in, like, if you would use like a two-way radio, we end each sentence with över, that kind of stuff. So it's very much the same. So yeah, that's why I have that there.
I think we should
so-
all learn Swedish.
Yes, I think that's the more.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah. So David could do or David could do the same thing here for Spanish, and or you could just use the same English commands for all languages. If I would have spoken more languages, maybe I wouldn't care about like keeping 5-6 different command sets up to date. But I think so the reason here I have like lists and tasks, paragraphs, lines. That's basically what I have, because I do emails and like GitHub issues. That is kind of like my extent of dictation. I don't do super advanced things. I don't need a super advanced dictation mode.
And sorry if I had to step away for a quick second. Are you using mixed mode? Is that why you have experiment anchor file?
No, this is not mixed mode, but I still have like commands in dictation mode, so I don't have to switch out if I just want to do like a new line or something.
But so how come you need anchor file for that?
Yeah, on that side, I just experimented with it. I don't actually use it.
Okay. So right. So you could use it for mixed mode, but you don't.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I do have support for mixed mode. It's just that I don't actually use it.
Okay. Oh,
Mixed
so your
mode.
dictation mode is fairly.
Say, now I'm dictating. Airbat cap. Uber. Browse. So there you can see when I said now I'm dictating, it picked that up as dictation, and airbat cap, of course, it picked up as commands. So that is mixed mode. Now my entire command set is available. Yeah.
How would it deal with numbers in when you do the say or sentence and also in dictation mode?
Uber.
If you said 1 or 2.
Browse. I have it set up so my user.text has numbers in it. So I would just say numb. So if I would just say like numb 55, that kind of stuff. Dictate. Hello numb 55. Hello 55.
So your
Browse.
user.pros, you mean, has those things?
Yeah,
in it.
both my user text and my user pros has. They are almost identical. I have some changes between them, but yeah, for most part they are the same.
I see. So that line 6 on the left is what's giving you a lot of fanciness. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so user pros.
Right.
Oh, so does the Swedish use web speech or does it use conformer?
Browse. Web speech.
Okay. Wow, that's pretty fast, as David commented.
Yeah, the problem is that I can't start speaking immediately. I can't do like the same way I do with dictation. Like sentence, this is a sentence, like all in one breath. I have to say Swedish and then wait for it, because Talon needs to go into like the new engine, and my little like rephrase hack that I have with conformer doesn't work with web speech. So I'm kind of like, so there is like a little overhead for the context switch, but once I'm actually doing dictation, yeah, web speech is fast. Swedish. Ny rad. Över. New line. Slap. That is the problem when you have different commands in command and dictation mode. Cancel. Swedish. Testar. Inga större problem här. Och alla är glada. Över. Browse. It's kind of interesting. I have no idea if web speech is as good as Talon or better in English, but for me, dictating in Swedish is more accurate. It could just be that I pronounce it better, of course, but I think that like the language model Google is using, because I don't have like the problem with homophones and that kind of stuff in web speech. It works. It most of the time gets it right,
You're using mixed mode in Swedish, right?
No, I don't actually use mix mode at all. I have it set up in English just to like play around with it for when it came out, but I don't actually use that.
So
Could
when
you
you're
use
dictating
one?
Swedish,
Yeah, it's just that Talon actually
that's only
supports
that's
non-English commands when. So when you are in, so when I'm in Swedish, I just use web speech instead of Conformer as like the voice engine. But Talon itself turns out doesn't actually care about which engine it is. So it will just match whatever I've written here to what the engine gives it, and so I don't have to use mix mode. I can just add commands in English or Swedish in these files, and it would just work. It's kind of interesting that. Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Does web speech work as well for the kind of big command graph that you get with mixed mode?
I haven't actually tried that. As you can see, I have a very small command graph here, and
That's one thing that
yeah, it might be if you tried it with mix mode, it might just barf. I have no idea, and it's kind of interesting that web speech in Swedish actually supports English, so I can actually do both Swedish and English in web speech in like. And I guess it's just because most people in Sweden speaks English, and a lot of like phrases and expressions we haven't actually translated. We are just using the English ones, so it's kind of like Google is smart enough to understand what I want.
Does Talon manage to teach web speech your like local vocabulary and stuff as well?
I don't think so. I think this is basically sending my audio to Google, getting a text string back, and then Talon tries to match that up. So you will never. Yes, I don't actually think my commands get like precedence in recognition and stuff like that you get with Conformer. This is basically just matching up strings, post parse.
Right.
Got it. Could be something fun to play with though. Web speech just for English for like some sort of like long form dictation where you want the accuracy and you're willing to give up like mixed mode or whatever. Custom vocabulary, and then you can go back to Conformer.
And I mean, one thing, I don't know if it's possible, but you could, in theory, run like multiple engines. You could, of course, have multiple Talon instances, but it might be possible to have multiple engines running at the same time. And then you could actually check the output from web speech and from Conformer and like compare them to try to get better homophones or whatever. I mean,
that's how I was going to try multiple Conformer versions without going insane. Just to run another version of Talon that all it does is just like user.phrase, user.notify or something, because I cannot A/B test.
Yeah, and then you just compare the difference between different engines and just see which one got it right more times. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's like going to the eye doctor. Is this better? Is this better? I have no. I can't tell.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is basically how I do dictation in Swedish and English, and I think it works quite well. But as I said, I use it mostly for like email, for Slack, and some GitHub issues and some README files and that kind of stuff. I don't at all do as much prose as many other people do. So.
So, I mean that was awesome, Andreas. Do you think it would make sense to do like a quick, like slightly longer dictation just so we can watch the full end-to-end process of writing like a paragraph or two, including the editing and stuff like that, just to sort of see how it ties together?
Yeah, sure, definitely.
And
so
can
like
I here too as well?
Say again.
I have my streaming setup is on and tested and functioning and captures every audio. So if you want, I can press a single button and have it all streamed to my unlisted YouTube.
Rouse. I think for now we are captioning it with OBS, so we're probably gonna just upload it to my own channel. But thanks.
I have a backup running as well, just in case your stream craps out, Andreas.
I've already got my back.
So either we can just like gibberish, or we can just like pick up
Swedish.
I mean, if you have something in mind you wanted to try,
it's probably better to do it in English so people can actually follow. But I don't have any. That's why I didn't do any long like demos, because I didn't actually know what I should talk about.
Maybe let's just pick a function from Cursorless Utilities and write a doc string. Maybe, because that gives us something like focused, and it'll have things you mentioned which you might need to replace with placeholders. I don't know, like, because we have plenty of plenty of things which could use doc strings.
I wouldn't say no to
Ralph.
Andreas just dictating in Swedish, so I can see more funny words to steal. But that's probably a better use of time.
Yeah, I can do a
Words to
bit.
steal, that's what
I will just make something up. I can do a bit of both.
Sure.
Dictate. This is going to be a description of an unknown issue. Period. Sentence in this paragraph, I'm going to describe some stuff, comma, and some other stuff, comma, and maybe even more stuff, period. New graph. Bullet. First problem. New line. Bullet. Second problem. Okay, there it was Slack that inserted it for me, and I wasn't ready for that. So yeah, just user error, cancel. Slap. New line. More problems. New line. And the final problem. New graph. New graph.
Oh, do you have rich text working?
Browse. Yeah, I have. My editor actually is Markdown rich text aware, but it's not stable enough that I really want to upstream it, because in that case we're gonna maybe get into cases where people can't do the draft editor at all because it's like breaking, and that it's very experimental.
But you round trip, like in practice, you round trip to Markdown.
Well, yeah. So what I do here is that since we are selecting everything and basically copying it, we get like the meme types. So there's a meme type for like rich text, and I actually parse that into Markdown and then the way back. Dictate.
Right. So you could say draft all, change it, and then come back, and it would be rich.
Yeah, definitely. I can show that. Cancel.
That's awesome.
Some
I didn't
stuff.
realize you'd gotten that working.
New line. Task. More stuff. Browse. You can see here that tasks was not added, immediately, but like the bullets was, because those are a part of Slack. That's why I'm in VS Code have all of those like autocompletes disabled, because I can never remember which application has like which.
Right.
New graph. Over. Swedish. Och här på slutet så testar vi lite svensk diktering. Punkt. Och lite fler ord så att Phil kan ha lite roligt att skratta åt det här. Punkt. Ny graf. Punktlista. Ny rad.
Punktlista.
Listpunkt. Mer grejer. Ny rad. Mer grejer. Över. Browse. Yeah, I mean, you can be as dramatic about it as you will. It's languages are interesting. Yeah, so the idea here is that now I'm going to take that to the draft editor. Draft all. Split solo. Browse. And you can see here that
It looks like it dropped its bullets, right?
Yeah, it did, and that's why I
There's
haven't
no
upstreamed
time.
it. I mean, that's
Okay, because it's a little flaky. Okay.
Yeah, I'm basically I have written my own rich text parser just because I couldn't find a good library for that. It appears to be very much opinionated and optional and all that kind of stuff. So it's just
Oh, I forgot you did it that. You ended up having to write your
When
own.
you say
Okay.
rich text parser, you mean from the clipboard? What
Yeah,
Slack puts on the
exactly.
clipboard?
Yeah.
And are you
Isn't it
parsing
that it's a horrendous format, right?
It's an absolutely
RTF?
horrendous format where you actually have to do like look aheads and then go back again and reevaluate, because it like how you should parse something depends on what comes after. It's just horrendous.
But you're talking about rich text format
Yeah.
specifically. Is that the only rich format they put on the clipboard?
No, they put a few different ones, and it all depends on the browser and to some extent the web application. Sometimes you actually get HTML in the clipboard. Sometimes
I
you
was
get
going to
rich
say, if
text.
you get
And
HTML, I
yeah,
think HTML Markdown is a much more
Yes.
well-trodden.
yeah. So I think I have it set up so it looks for like complete different formats, tries to interpret them, and fallbacks to plain text if it can't find it, and it's just. Yeah. So that's why I'm not upstreamed. It's not completely done.
And did you say that you're parsing the rich text stream yourself?
Yes.
That is badass. Because there are tools like Pandoc that'll do that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I have written like program like parsers for like XML and C, and I mean all kind of languages. It's just one of those things where it's super annoying, but I couldn't find a library that worked well in Python. I'm not a Python programmer, so I might have not just, or I mean in TypeScript. Sorry, I think. No, I'm doing this. I'm doing this Python side. That's why I'm doing it in Python before I.
I also thought it was not proper rich. I thought it was kind of their own weird.
Yeah,
thing,
Slack has some like. I think that is the problem. That I tried a few libraries and it wouldn't work on Slack because Slack is Slack.
Yeah, they do some janky ass stuff in the accessibility value.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember. I haven't actually touched this in a long while. So now we are here. For example, take Foxcap. Browse. This one should not say sentence. Sentence, some better text to put. Post xpit dot. Clear red dot bang. Clear red dot bang. Chuck blue star. Pre-red fine slice red air bullet. Pre-green pit slice red made bullet. Undo. Void. Pre-earn slice green made bullet. Upper format line red pit. Draft submit. Browse. Yeah, you can see this is totally broken. Trying to do like rich text and markdown conversion is I have to put way more energy into that than I actually have at the moment.
That's why I was surprised that you have their rich text display on, and rather than just using raw markdown. Like, how do you usually do draft? Like, do you just not usually do long bulleted things in Slack? I'm just curious what your usual workflow is.
No, in Slack I usually don't do that. Or as I said, I just do like draft this with something empty, and I do it completely in. Because I think the other way around, I think it works better. Slapper.
Right.
Draft this.
Right.
Bullet. Word hello, slap. Bullet. Word something, slapper. Task. Word whatever, slap, task. More stuff. Draft submit. Browse.
Yeah.
Have you tried?
I like the angry Swedish.
Changing the setting for always interpret the messages as markdown?
Yeah, so
there's a setting for that.
Yeah, is there a setting for that in Slack in the browser? I'm not using the application.
Pretty sure. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I was surprised you used their rich text editor rather than using the raw. If you do the settings,
I mean, the idea was that I should have proper support for rich text, but then I found out that Slack is using some weird format, and then you're probably right. I should probably just disable it. That is probably a good call.
Yeah, because I saw you had it on. And I was like, oh man, he must have gotten that thing really, really airtight. But I guess you just don't do that much rich text in Slack, so it's just not an issue.
No, definitely not. It's just one of those things where I often when I do dictation mode, it is actually for like an email. So it's like new line and new paragraph. Those are basically the ones I'm using because I'm writing an email, and then I might have a bullet list in there, but I might actually do the bullet list in command mode just because it's just one of those things where I keep like waffling back and forth. In some sense, of course, you could have a dictation mode. It's just so perfect that you can just stay in there. And if you would do like, if you would be like a novelist or something, you would probably just be in dictation mode. But for me, I just keep jumping over to other applications and using the eye tracker to focus stuff and copying it and going back and copying things in cursorless. And it's just one of those things where I probably do chunks of text in dictation mode, but if I need to do more advanced stuff, I probably use command mode and jump around afterwards and try to add that.
Yeah.
Not optimal. I could definitely improve this workflow.
But yeah, it's just useful to see someone's workflow who
Yeah.
I mean, because you don't have a keyboard plugged in, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Like usually if I'm typing free text, I never use dictation mode. I just just because I don't spend enough time.
It's probably
optimize
I think the main thing is probably that for email I do those mostly in Swedish, and I don't. As I said, I don't really have that problem with like homophones, and web speech treats like numbers and all of that really well. So
interesting.
so and so for English is more when I write on like Slack and that kind of stuff, and I don't often have to do like a large paragraph and then like a bullet list and a large paragraph and then some task and that kind of stuff. That is like a GitHub issue definitely can turn into that, but the mostly I actually just use like sentence and I as I told you, I use the old like airline trick of don't leaving like the airways empty. Slapper.
Wait, what?
Sentence, this is some text, and now I have some more words, and now I'm done.
Is that not hard on your voice?
I mean, most of the time I think like beforehand, but if I forget, it's just one of those things where, you can definitely
Not too bad.
Yeah. And you could probably even use like white noise. Slapper. Sentence, this is some
Use
text.
Talon's weaknesses against it.
Okay, you have to get up to a level that it can actually like grasp but cancel. Drowse.
Just turn on a fan blasting right at your microphone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean it depends on like also what you end your word in. You can just end it on like an that kind of stuff. That is not too hard on your voice, so it's just. I mean, don't do that all the time. If you need to do it all the time, you should probably be in dictation mode. But if you are writing something in command mode and it's just one word where you just need to think a bit extra, just make some noise that is not actually vocalized, and Talon will just wait for you. It's just one of those weird things, and I'm actually quite happy with my setup in general. I think that the combination of using like different modes and eye tracker and like the parrot noises and cursorless, and it's many different parts. So like getting this set up it takes more than a week, but once it's actually up and running, I don't have any like real problems. Snap left, focus code, snap right. Tab last, split down, cross, drowse. I mean, I could not do that as fast using a keyboard or a mouse. I could use it using like a tiling editor with like, that of course it works, but like using just dragging windows around in like Windows operating system is, way more inefficient. Talon is actually quite fast.
Yeah, and you'll end up, you'll learn efficient voice commands for all those things, whereas 99% of people aren't going to bother to figure out the keyboard shortcuts to do all of those different things, right?
No, that's true. Yeah.
And then
I'm remembering then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that is the thing. If I work in a specific application, extensively, you will learn those commands, but those are different for every single application. I mean, there are some applications I use very seldom at work. I can never remember the keys for actually doing like new tabs or closing tabs because it's not like the default one. They have some weird things. And just adding that configuration to Talon once and then it's just tab new. I mean, that is just...
Right.
It really should be the same thing with keyboard. Keyboard shortcuts should be standardized, but they will never be. So having a layer on top of it is actually quite nice.
And another good thing is I had to test some stuff in Windows and Linux, and I had to install them. And it's nice because you use those systems the same as you use Mac. You use all the systems the same. The commands are the same. I brought my commands, and I could use Talon without. I could use the system without many issues. I could focus this application, or all the commands could be the same.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really powerful. It's I'm very happy with the setup I have right now. I mean, I've gotten to a point right now where I've started gaming again, and I mean, when I started with Talon, I was just happy that I could just type out a few sentences. I mean, that was like a miracle that I could actually get to like the proficiency where you could code as fast or faster and like play computer games and that kind of stuff. It's just amazing.
Now I really want to see you stream. I want to see some Diablo.
I mean, if you have the time, I can show you Diablo for 10 minutes.
I mean, we got 10 minutes left on the meetup. If people have no more dictation questions,
I just have a. Could you explain the purpose of line 6, and also the
Browse.
the format reset line as well would be line 16.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can do this in Swedish, in the English one instead. Split solo. Browse. Okay, line 6 is like the meat of the dictation mode. It just says like, so user.pros is basically like the Talon phrase capture, but with my vocabulary and like number capture and those kind of stuff. So it's like user.words is used when you're not in dictation. So that is basically like any spoken phrase. And on the right hand side, when you have like a literal string, that is the same as calling the action auto insert. So it's actually just by like match any spoken phrase and insert that.
So without line 6, it would not be that line 6 is what makes it dictation.
Yeah, exactly. If I would have put a prefix on line 6, like say or something, then that would just have been like a say command.
Yeah, so that's the sort of the equivalent of the say or sentence or title prose.
Yeah, just that it doesn't do any formatting. The dictation pro. So the difference between prose and words is that prose has like auto capitalization and those kind of stuff built in. So that is what makes it dictation mode. On line 21, format reset. That is basically just telling it that even if I didn't end like my last sentence on a period, like treat it as I'm now have reset the state. So there is nothing to the left and right that you need to worry about in regards to punctuation or capitalization. There are like no current states at all. I'm now in a completely like reset state. So, and that is just because I'm lazy and sometimes forget to do a period. And now, of course, it starts the next paragraph with lowercase because it does, yeah.
Is there a limit to how many commands you should sensibly put within dictation mode?
I mean, if people are using mixed mode, then no. I mean, it's whatever works for you. The problem, of course, is that you might end up triggering commands when you actually want to dictate that word and vice versa. It's just, you know.
And is there a reason that you don't do, like, because I found it surprising that when I say 1, it doesn't come out with a number 1, because that seemed to me.
I mean, you could do that. That is like. Scout number.
So you have it so that you require a prefix on that, right? So
yes,
you have to say
cancel.
num1.
Shh. Scout file number. Browse. Yeah, so here's my number capture. It says like num or number followed by a string, but clear pair pink each. Disk. Sentence testing 55. Browse. That's it.
Wow.
Undo. Browse. But the
If
problem, of course,
anyone-
is that you might actually you might not want that. I tried to running it like that, and I ended up with scenarios where Conformer would because Conformer really loves numbers, so it would just hear numbers when I said other stuff. I can't remember use case right now. Oh, 4. Yeah. So instead, this is for you, and it would enter that in number 4. That was not optimal.
Right.
Stop. Git revert file. Disk. Git revert file. Browse. I had something set up where if it was like below 10, it would write it out as text, or it wouldn't touch the text. So if I said 4 or 1 or 2, those kind of stuff would just be left untouched. But if I said 11:55, it would turn out in numbers, and I like that better. But it was just one of those things where then I had to think about when I wanted to do a number. Okay, is this going to be inserted by itself, or do I have to think? I mean, it was just easier to always have that prefix.
Consistency.
Yeah, consistency is key.